Hey, I'm still Noble, or at least that's my internet name, and I love art. I enjoy consuming it just as much as I enjoy making it, and many different kinds of art too, which I'll get into later. Currently, on this channel, I make videos about fantasy stuff, mostly about world building advice, showing off my own world building, sometimes narrative stuff too. I'm making this video for two reasons. The first is that I want to share my thoughts with you guys, the viewers, because I really do think that art is an important part of humanity. And I don't mean that in some insufferable, egotistical way like,
"Oh, art is so amazing and wonderful and essential, and we artists are just as important as doctors and firefighters."
Yes. No, that's dumb. I'll explain the importance later. The second reason is that, because art is especially important to me, I want this to serve as a reminder to myself, and a love letter for why I do this. Speaking of why I do this, let me go back to the beginning, my beginning, so I can explain. When I was a kid, I was very fortunate enough to have a decent amount of toys to play with. Whenever I would play with them, like with Star Wars toys for example, sometimes I would pretend like the characters were in that universe doing the things that they would normally do. The Jedi would fight the Sith, the clone troopers would fight the droids, and so on and so on. But other times, I would imagine them as their own characters, in their own scenarios, that I made up. Sometimes not even in the Star Wars universe, just whatever I had created in that moment. And beyond that, other times I would take toys from some other universe and play with them together as if they were all part of this little micro-story I had made while playing. I didn't know it at the time, but this was my first experience with world building and storytelling, even though I was the only one who knew the stories. That experience isn't unique to me. I'm sure other people have done similar things when they were kids, but that's just what started the creative spark in me. As I got older, I stopped playing with them as I picked up other interests, but I still had a fascination with the toys themselves. To me, it was cool to be able to have like a physical, tangible character that I could see. So sometimes if I had an idea to create my own character, I would kitbash and combine parts and scraps from several different toys to create something new. I even learned a bit about painting and sculpting with epoxy putty. I couldn't draw or paint pictures very well, still can't, and I wasn't much of a writer, but this was my form of creating characters, and I liked it. In fact, it's something I would dabble with from time to time, even through college, especially as a way to de-stress from class or assignments. I guess that was my version of painting tabletop minis. For some reason, something about kitbashing and taking pieces and parts from a bunch of different things to make something new really scratches an itch in my brain, and it's something I do to this day with my videos. Like I said, I'm not much of an illustrator. I make what I can, but sometimes I have to capture scenes from games or make my own 3D scenes in a program like Flowscape to convey my world building or narrative ideas. I'll even throw in some stock videos and images too. I have a lot of ideas for worlds, settings, characters, and stories, so I'll scrap together whatever I can to get those ideas out there. Speaking of story, I think that's my favorite form of art, whether it's movies, shows, books, or even just someone verbally reciting one. And not just the stories themselves, but storytelling as well. One of my favorite aspects about stories is that even the way you present them is an art form. And here's the thing, everyone, not literally everyone, but you get what I mean, loves stories. We might have different opinions about the medium of the story, such as some people only like movies, or only like TV, or only like books. Some people don't like media at all, but love workplace gossip. We love them in all the different forms because storytelling is so deeply ingrained into humanity. But why? It's something I've been fascinated with for a while now, and after a lot of research, Googling, and introspection, here's my take on the most common conclusions. Storytelling is one of the best ways we pass on information to each other. It allows us to feel real emotions in a safe space, and people just like to be entertained. When we were cavemen thousands of years ago, we didn't have schools or books or especially the internet to get information. But we did have language thanks to evolution. or rather, the ability to learn and create language. Languages aren't something we're born with, but our advanced brains are capable of not just attributing meaning to spoken sounds and symbols, but also the ability to apply abstract and critical thinking with that meaning. We can learn skills or information and then teach that to other people, and not just as a form of student mimicking teacher, but student understanding the how and why of the skill and putting that meaning to further use. For example, if you were a caveman out hunting one day and you saw a rock with a painting of a bear chasing a human, there's a good chance you might interpret that as some kind of warning, and as a result, you might adjust your strategy accordingly. As time went on and our languages developed, our storytelling did too. We could go from simple things like, "Watch out for bears, they ate my brother yesterday," to narratives with complexity, depth, and subtext. We can use those things to enhance the story and add even further meaning without having to directly express it word for word. Think of any fairy tale, folktale, or urban legend you heard growing up. Most of those usually have some kind of message or cautionary tale within them, just with the veneer of a fun story. Take something like The Boy Who Cried Wolf. Boy lies about a thing, everyone stops believing him, then that thing happens for real and he gets eaten or whatever. Moral of the story, stop lying, bozo. The reason those work on us is because if you're a kid, or sometimes an adult, and someone tells you something, whether it's a warning or, "Hey, be sure to do this," there's a decent chance that you might be like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." But once you introduce characters and show the consequences of their actions, then you might think, "Wait, that can happen? Wolves can just eat you?" We can use stories like that as a way to teach and give experience from a position of safety. Since our brains are, again, so advanced and developed compared to other animals, we're able to connect emotionally with them because we can visualize ourselves in the story. For example, we get scared from scary movies even though we're perfectly safe watching them from a screen. Empathy and sympathy are powerful emotions, and usually, not always of course, but usually, one of the goals of a story is to get you, the audience, to care about or at least be invested in a character so that when things happen or stakes are presented, you'll want to know what happens next and care about the consequences. Even if the character is completely fictional, we can still form an emotional connection and want them to succeed. Or if it's a villain or some other character we hate, we want them to fail. It's a little crazy to me to step back and see that these fake and fictional things can evoke real emotions from us. We're made to feel real things for these stories, and that allows us to appreciate and understand the information from them without having to live those experiences ourselves. But also, we're still animals deep down, and we still have a little bit of lizard brain left over. So sometimes it's fun to be able to see or experience something entertaining, even more so if it's something we don't normally see in our day-to-day lives. That's why, especially for children, those fairy tales and folk tales can be so formative for them. They're able to learn those lessons and form those emotional connections and practice experiencing those feelings of danger or success because we make the lessons entertaining to them. Storytelling was an important part of early human development. And while it's not quite as crucial for survival today as it was then, I think it still carries a lot of weight as a method of transferring information and establishing emotional connections. And those emotional connections aren't just between the audience and the story itself, but between the audience members as well. Shared experiences can really elevate an event and give it more impact or importance, at least to the people who participate in them. When you view or take part in something, you can be perfectly happy and content with that if you're the only participant. Some things are definitely better in isolation, but other things, together, can make you feel like you're part of something greater. First, there's the emotional connection you form with the event, in this case, a story, or any piece of art, really. But then there's the connection you form with anyone else who participated. Maybe it's the other people in the theater as you watch a horror movie and collectively groan when the protagonist makes a terrible mistake. Maybe it's you and your family, or a loved one, sitting around the TV to watch your favorite show, or you going to an internet forum or social media to freak out about the crazy thing that happened in the show. Maybe it's you talking with a stranger about your favorite movies or shows or whatever, and you realize that you have some common interests, or you realize that you don't. Those can be core and formative memories. Maybe it's because I don't go to theaters that much, but I can vividly remember the experience of going to see movies like Us or Infinity War and hearing the audience around me react to the movie. I've seen a lot of movies at home by myself, and while I enjoyed them, I couldn't tell you about the experiences because they just weren't that memorable, aside from the movies themselves. In a world of increasing loneliness, one of the silver linings is that the internet, which is arguably one of the biggest causes for a lot of that loneliness, allows us to have some of those shared experiences that you might not have been able to in the past. So even if there isn't anyone physically around you with those experiences, there are definitely people out there who have felt the exact same emotions as you did for whatever art form you enjoy. The last thing I want to touch on for stories, and this extends to other art forms too, is the cultural importance of them. Art is often a form of commentary about humanity and the state of our world, whether it's about how things were, how they are, or how they might be in the future. It also reminds us about how we perceived things at the time the piece of art was created. Stories were the way our ancestors preserved and passed on their knowledge and history, first verbally, and then with writing and other forms of art. But if you look just a little deeper, they can serve as tiny cultural time capsules too. As an example, look at any depiction of dinosaurs in the past 100 years. There's a good chance that that's how we thought they looked at the time, but now we think they might look a little different as we uncover more fossils. This applies to other things too, like ever-changing social norms and historical accounts. It's interesting to me that it isn't just the art itself that serves as commentary, but also everything surrounding the art when we look back on it. Who made it? When did they make it? Why? How? Where? As I said earlier, I mostly make world building and narrative videos about fantasy stuff. I don't think fantasy is necessarily my favorite genre. I don't even know if I have a favorite, but it's the one I understand the most. Things like mythology and legends and lore and creatures and heroes and villains and anything in between really click with me. I enjoy other media in other genres, but when it comes to creating things, I think fantasy is what I'm best at, for now. I genuinely love creating stuff. Fixing things definitely releases a little dopamine too, but to be honest, I feel the most alive when I'm making stuff. It's fun to have a vision of something and then bring it into reality, or at least bring the idea into reality. There's so much room for expressionism that I can put my own spin on things and do them the way I want to. I can create these worlds and settings to tell the kinds of stories that I like, and I can do it in a way that acts as an extension of myself, my thoughts, my ideas. It sounds a little backwards that I feel that way when I'm thinking of these fictional things, like writing lore for my settings, but it's true. And I think writing that lore is my greatest strength as a world builder. My art style is maybe a little better than MS Paint on a good day, but I do think my lore and the history and the characters in my settings are much better than I'm capable of portraying them at the moment, visually at least. I could try to write short stories or novels about my worlds and characters. It's definitely something I've considered, but I really enjoy portraying all of that through visual mediums, like videos. I've also considered making comics as a way to have short stories or anthologies, while also having that visual medium, but I think I'd like to work with or hire a proper artist for that. Maybe one day. I know my strengths and weaknesses and limitations. So I know that I'm a far better writer than an illustrator. As I've said a million times already, yeah, I know it's getting old. But the thing is, I'm okay with that. I like working as a team and collaborating. And obviously, when you have multiple people who are good at their part of the project, the final product is going to be way better than if I had done everything myself, as long as there's a clear and cohesive vision. I'm going to use music as an example. I know a little bit about music production, but it's not something I would say I'm good at. Usually, I use YouTube's music library for my videos because 1, it's free, and 2, there's actually some really good stuff in there. but I was making a video about a tundra setting, and I wanted it to be special. I needed the music to be specific. Thankfully, my friend Absent Plan was very kind enough to make some songs for me. Here's one of the songs and the place in the setting it goes with. I'm gonna let it ride for a moment. That still gives me chills. Yeah, I could have used something from YouTube's library, and it probably would have been okay, but through collaboration, I think the final product was much more satisfying and perfectly fit the vision I had for my setting. So again, huge thanks to Absent Plan, you guys should check him out. The last thing I want to talk about is my photography. I saved this one for last because my pictures are something that I cherish, and I usually only show them to friends or family. I'm not trying to say I'm some master photographer and that my pictures are wonders to behold. I just like to do it as a personal hobby, for me. If you made it this far in the video, or you just skipped ahead, thanks for making it. I'm gonna show off some of my pictures here because you guys are the ones who would probably appreciate them, since you watched the rest of the video. That classic phrase, "a picture is worth 1,000 words," is undeniably true, and it's one of my favorite things about photography. With a regular story, there's a beginning, middle, and end. A journey. But pictures tell a different kind of story. One single frame can convey so much emotion, capture a fleeting moment, or establish a mood or a tone. I think pictures can also leave a little more room for interpretation. There isn't any context before or after the moment. The only information you get is what's in that one single frame, and the rest is up to the viewer to interpret, assuming the artist doesn't provide additional information outside the picture. Art can be a very personal thing. It's full of subjectivity and vulnerability, especially when it's other people viewing or listening to something you made. But as I get older, I've come to realize that, for me, art is best when shared with other people. It's a scary thing sometimes. It's kind of a leap of faith to put your creations out there for the world to see. It's a gamble whether or not people will like it. But I think the risk is worth it. Chances are, not everyone will like your stuff, but there's a flip side to that. There will also probably be people who love and adore what you make. That's the double-edged sword of subjectivity. If you like to make art solely for your own personal enjoyment, keep doing that. You can have things that are just for you and you alone. But if you're someone who wants to put your creations out there, yet you're scared of the vulnerability or the criticism, I think you should just try it. It's okay to feel scared or nervous about it, but if it's something you've been dreaming about doing, then the only true form of failure is if you don't try at all. People are always on the lookout for something new, a fresh perspective, another interpretation, an original idea. There's a good chance that someone out there is looking for the exact type of stuff that you make. You just have to give it a shot. Thank you so much for watching, or at least listening. I know I've already taken up a lot of your time, but I'd love to hear about what art means to you, or even what your favorite kind of art or favorite piece is. Movies, TV, books, plays, games, pictures, stories you've heard from your cousin's weird friend, anything. Leave a comment and let me know. See you later.